Happy Halloween, folks! According to the title card there, it's October 30th, 1988, which, according to the old internet, would have been a Sunday. Looking back on this, though, this is almost like the quintessential sort of Halloween movie to me, because I can't kind of 100% remember the order I saw them in. Pretty sure I saw the original first, or Halloween 3, so thereabouts. But as I was getting into like horror and renting a load of films in the mid to late 80s, I can remember this being a brand new film. It was in all the video magazines, and there was a kind of little bit of mini controversy, but there was like I'm sure I've got a video times with it in. A guy was accused of murdering somebody, and he blamed it on Halloween 4. He was like, I heard the voice of Video Michael, and it was like on the front page of like the British tabloids, newspapers. And so it was like a big deal at the time. And around, like I say, this film was just everywhere. It's in all the video shops, like I say, and it's in all the film magazines. You remember pulling the poster out, like, you know, on the free video books and sticking it on my wall and stuff. Music by Helen Elworth, credit coming up, and touch up on all the stuff later, hopefully, if I can remember. Yeah, but this was one of those films where, with it being new, when it being a new film, and I remember all the hype and all the sort of, you know, Michael Myers is coming back and all that kind of stuff. And I was always a big fan of Halloween 3, and the people, those people out there always slag it off for like, oh, it's the one without Michael Myers. Well, I never saw that as a problem, and Michael Myers is actually in Halloween 3. I know I was gonna go to my grave saying that you know, because he's in it a couple of times, you know, just on the TV and stuff like that. But yeah, anyway, Michael Myers was back, and it was a big deal. But I can always remember, and I've got it literally sitting in front of me, the X-Rental VHS that I brought from Stu's old shop, and I'll touch upon a few things about that later as well. But yeah, I got the X-Rental VHS, and so this is one of those films where I've seen, you know, probably more times than any of the other Halloweens, really. And I think I might have said it on the Halloween 2 commentary that we did, but I would say this is almost a pitch-perfect slasher movie. It's got, like, you know, it's a sequel, so you've instantly got some kind of identification with it. You've already got some sort of pre-existing knowledge of what's going on. And I think sequels have always got, in my mind anyway, a kind of coolness to them, because I remember it was about like 1990 when Empire first started, and it was like big hot summer blockbusters for 1990, 1991, that kind of thing. And for some reason, all the sequels really stood out to me. It was like, you know, things like, you know, Ghostbusters 2 or RoboCop 2 or those kind of things. And I don't know why, I've always been a sucker for like just revisiting something. Even like today when I went and I got a beer with me. It's I've got some Miller today. It's Miller time, everybody. Yeah. When I went to the supermarket today, got my pumpkin ready to do my jack-o'-lantern in a week or so, just over a couple of weeks. And I got my jack-o'-lantern, I got my beer, and just walking through the DVD section, I noticed Tremors 5. And I was even though I'm not a huge Tremors fan, I think I maybe have seen Tremors 2 or something like that. But I was instantly sort of, I felt like a connection to that. I was like, oh wow, you know, Tremors 5, they've actually done a Tremors 5, cool. And it's a bit like with films like this, or like say when you just realising how much of a film fan I was, and getting into it as a medium, and getting into just the whole concept of being a movie fan. I don't know why, and I guess it's probably a really obvious thing to say, really. It's probably why sequels are popular. There's the trainer from Rocky 4, again, just tying into what I'm just saying there. The trainer of Ivan Drago. But yeah, it's sort of instantly just sort of draws me in a little bit more. And because I was born in 1974, and it's always one of those things where I always find it really funny that the very first sequel to win a Best Picture Oscar was The Godfather Part 2. So I think for my whole life, basically, literally starting from almost day one, Godfather Part 2, and then, you know, leading on to things like Jaws 2, and, you know, Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi, Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, which was prequel, but that's beside the point. But yeah, I think I've always had that sort of predisposition to sort of a follow-up, a sequel. And it's kind of conversely, though, it's really messed up, as I love a sequel, love a continuation. And, like, even now somebody said to me, well, even the next Friday the 13th film will be Friday the 13th 13. If they did it, straight and stuff like that, just carried it straight on. And I'd be well up for that. And this is, actually, talk about, hopefully I'll come back to this in a second, but this Halloween theme coming on, I think is a really important thing to mention about this film. And that's another thing as well. I think with sort of, seeing Halloween 3 in the first Halloween, I was always a big fan of John Carpenter anyway. So any kind of connection to the series, whether it was like Helen Elworth doing the music from Halloween 3 with John Carpenter, or John Carpenter, Deborah Hill, the characters John Carpenter doing the theme, I was always up for anything like that. Like, a big fan of, I'm one of the few people on earth that watches the credits and stuff like that. So anytime I can pull a name out the credits and think, oh wow, they worked on the previous one, or the stuntman worked on part 2 as well as part 3 and 4 and things like that. So any kind of connection, I'm well up for that, because it just sort of, it cements it for me into sort of, building in this big world within the film, and just within the, just being a fan of film, and just think, oh, I want to watch more John Carpenter films, or more films with music by Alan Elworth and stuff like that. But the thing that I find, and this, I'm kind of trying to get the habit to say this, but what I find really sort of, it really piques my interest anyway. I always find it really interesting, but what I do is what people decide to bring over to a remake or a reboot. And again, I know there's a little bit of a mini trend at the moment to do a remake as a kind of a catch-all thing. So it's not only a remake, it's a sequel and it's a reboot. So you're literally sort of pleasing everybody at the same time, or trying to please everybody at the same time. So you got things like the new Vacation movie and things like that, or the new Mad Max movie, where it's part remake, part sequel, and there's like these little little nods and little winks to the original movies. And I'm well up for that. And even though I'm one of the few people that likes the Rob Zombie Halloween movies, and I'm a particular fan, and I've literally got it sitting in front of me as the Blu-ray to Halloween 2. I love Rob Zombie's Halloween 2. I thought it was very sort of, spoilers, I guess, because it's still relatively new. Me and Stu went that film as well. Me and Stu went to see that film at the Odeon, like I said, sort of try and touch upon like little references. And I know I did a Halloween 2 commentary with Curtis and Tom, so I don't want to sort of try and remember what I said on that commentary. I was quite drunk, which again does sound like me, but I'm trying to remember what I said on the Halloween 2 commentary. I don't want necessarily go over old ground necessarily, which I guess is kind of crazy when you're doing a Halloween 4 commentary. Kind of repeat. Oh, I'm gonna sneeze. Or maybe not. I think you're going to sneeze a weird feeling. But so what they feel like bringing over to a remake or reboot is interesting. The new RoboCop is a really good example where there's one part where they show a suit that looks really like the original suit, and there's one part where they play the original Basil Podoria's theme tune and things like that. And so it's kind of like, think, ooh, it's a shout out to the original, or they just, when you're just starting anew, why would they do that? I mean, I'm like I say again, it just always kind of makes me, I'm like, oh, I love all that. And it's probably why I will never be a successful producer or director, because I don't think I could help myself. If somebody said to me now, you're making a new Halloween film, you can start afresh, I'd use the John Carpenter theme, I'd have cameos by everybody, I'd have little references. There's a Jamie Lee Curtis, picture of Jamie Lee Curtis there. Oh, she's named Jamie too. But I'd be well up for all that stuff, and I'd literally couldn't help myself. It'd be the stupidest film ever made. If it was meant to be dead serious, it'd all those little built-in undercurrents of all these little cameos and everything. This is a great scene now. I'm sure there's a thing on YouTube where it's like top 10 scary scenes, and somebody said Halloween 4, and I thought it was pretty cool. The Rob Zombie Halloween film. So you've got this brand new, completely sort of starting afresh kind of thing. And Danielle Harris there, this was her first movie. Well, according to the opening titles, it said introducing Danielle Harris. And she's in Halloween 5. So you've got a really strong sort of main character from Halloween 4 and 5. And then she's in Rob Zombie's Halloween 1 and 2. And it's like, fair enough. I mean, again, I don't mind. I think it's cool. And I personally, I've got no problem with it. But like, it's kind of like, well, if it was like a little cameo walking past the camera, or she bumps into Michael Myers or something. And again, it's, to me, I don't really mind either way, because I think, it kind of builds in this built-in universe. But then you've got Danielle Harris, and then they used the John Carpenter theme music as well in both movies, both of Rob Zombie's movies, and it's like, it's one of the best theme tunes you'll ever hear. The 5/4 time, and it just throws you off key. No pun intended. I'm sure if it was a pun, because it's just stating what music is. But yeah, you've got the John Carpenter theme. You've got previous actors who've been in the previous series, and then even like Halloween 2. As much as I love Halloween 2, and I wouldn't have it any other way, the very first, again, spoilers, because I say it's a relatively new film, the second portion of the movie is pretty weird and out there. But the first part of the movie is basically a remake of Halloween 2. It's set in the hospital. And Rob Zombie's Halloween 1. Obviously, quite broad brushstrokes, but you've got the you've got the kid who goes crazy. They're watching The Thing on the TV, or they're definitely watching the Howard Hawks movie. So you've got like all these things where you are putting your own spin on it. I think Rob Zombie did a really good job, all things considered. I think, it's easy to say, people, oh, Rob Zombie or Michael Bay, all these kind of people. And especially if you grew, and I think if you're not just saying October 31st now, which is a Monday, if we're going by real 1988 days and dates, was I guess we should. So if, like someone like a Rob Zombie, kind of thing, that sort of, it's easy to sort of, like I say, if you grew up sort of, that's crazy though there, because I just had this on in the background while I was just setting the equipment up, and they're like, that guy looks at his wife as if it's her fault he's dipped his tie in his tea, and it's like, what? But I think if you sort of were sort of growing up in the 70s and 80s, I think it's easier to sort of look at like Rob Zombie's films and sort of think, oh, he's this or he's that, or he's not always trying to be cool or hip or whatever. But like I say again, it's this broad brushstrokes thing. But what elements do you just want to subtly reference or touch upon? And are you literally trying to sort of, even though you're updating it and remaking it, are you literally saying that it's kind of in the same universe, it's part of the same fabric? Because it's like with the Rob Zombie's Halloween 2, with it being set in a hospital, that could have been started off anywhere. That could have been any sort of story element. It could have been set in a police station. It could have been, complete, starting afresh kind of thing. And I think just to go straight into basically remake Halloween 1, with a few exceptions, the violence is toned up, the violence is turned up, and Michael Myers is this huge 7-foot guy and stuff, and you can definitely tell it's got its own stamp on there, and there's like loads of rock and heavy metal references and things like that, which is cool, because obviously Rob Zombie, talented musician and everything. But at the same time, it's kind of like, well, I kind of just love that sort of production design element, and I think that's one thing. I think I've got this really bizarre thing where I look at films as not just the film itself and what you're watching as a film, but like how the producers came at it, how the writers came at it, what was cut out of it, what was put in it, what was on the soundtrack, what the poster looked like, what it felt like, say, when I grew up as this film was being released, what I remember from when the film was released, what I took from those personal experiences and things. And so to me, it's kind of like looking at all these films as one big giant sort of collage, sort of montage thing. And once I was just there, I was like, Michael M. I was like, who's Michael M? It's like, oh yeah, Michael Myers, of course. But yes, you've got all these little all these elements working together, and I do kind of like reading them completely as one thing or two completely separate things. where you have got like sort of, you know, the originals, and then you've got Halloween 3, which is almost its own original thing again, and you've got Halloween H2O, which is like, you know, ignoring parts 4 and 5 and 3, and then continuing on from parts 2, and you know, so it's this weird sort of mishmash of like, yeah, you could look at it as one complete series, or, you know, it's been rebooted about 2 or 3 times within its own continuity and things like that, so it's kind of cool. That was one thing as well, and again, I've said on a few of these commentaries, I don't want to get too meta, because it's like, there's nothing worse. You just want just all these film people who are like, again, actually, I was kind of mini rant here, but this is what, a dial phone, how cool is that? And that's one thing as well, where this kind of ties into the mini rant thing, but like, and I've heard a few people say this, but like, where people are, they allegedly don't know what a corded phone is, or they don't know what a dial phone is, or a record player and things like that. You've only got go back to like 1988, 1989, 1990, and all these things are still really prevalent in movies, you know, like up until like the 2000s and stuff. And then you go in record shops now, they still sell vinyl. I've got a corded phone like right next to me, you see them on TV all the time. But yeah, leading into that kind of thing of like there, where you look at that scar on his face, and I've heard so many people over the years. Oh, actually, this is nothing I wanted to say. If I hear another person saying this, I'll lose my mind. But when people talk about the ending to Skyfall, again, spoilers because it's relatively new, but it ends where they sort of old up in like a huge, like sort of old-fashioned country house, almost like a little bit of a mini castle kind of thing. And one of the very first things I thought when I saw Skyfall was, oh, it's a siege movie. It's like, you know, Rio Bravo, Assault on Precinct 13, all those great siege movies, Night of the Living Dead and things like that. And then you see every review for it. Everybody on the internet always says, oh, it's like Home Alone. Oh, it's the Home Alone ending. And you're like, how in the heck, as a subgenre, as cool as the siege movie, and again, I don't want to be too meta or too fanish about it, but probably the coolest subgenre of all time is the siege movie. Perfect. I think everybody watches something like, especially something like Night of the Living Dead, which is a perfect siege movie, or like say Rio Bravo. I'm pretty sure most people would watch one of those films and think, what would I do in that situation? Well, this, you know, 50, 60, 70% of the audience, and you've literally took this great concept, this great, you know, this great reason for all these movies existing, you know, Ghosts of Mars, all these different things, and now it's become the Home Alone ending. It's like, wow, how times have changed. Yeah, but like I say, just like a little bit of a mini rant there. But again, one thing I think it's definitely worthy of bringing up, because it's quite pertinent to the time I'm recording this commentary, is that Zarbin is closing down. Oh, it seems like the website's just going to be sort of frozen in time kind of thing. And again, you know, it's hard to sort of sometimes say stuff like this without being sort of too sentimental and things like that. But when me, Stu, Tom and Curtis started up the DVD commentaries site, and I, you know, obviously I listen to DVD commentaries and things like that on the internet, and on DVD and, you know, on Laserdisc and things. And it was always one of them things when, you know, we come up with the idea of like, you know, and we were like in this curry house in Stoke, and we were like, oh, let's you know, let's do DVD commentaries, and we're like, oh yeah, cool. And, you know, we sort of did it, and we just, you know, we uploaded to webs and all this kind of stuff. And what was the name of that website that got taken down? I'm like, but yeah, we uploaded them to the internet and stuff, and it was great to have somewhere like Zarbin where you know, you could upload the commentaries and things, and it felt like a proper community in the sense that I don't think there was tons of posts, and there was never really tons of Mega Upload, that was the place. Yeah, so, you know, you'd see the odd comment on Mega Upload, or you get the odd email and things like that, and, you know, on the DVD commentaries, Video Warriors forums and things, you know, you get people replying and stuff, which was cool. But it was really good to be able to go to Zorb, and you knew all your commentaries were going to go up there. And, you know, seeing people like Two True Freaks and, you know, Bradley Taylor, Sean Pultz, all these different people. So it's really cool. And it was like, and again, you know, not wanting to get too, you know, sort of, you know, everybody always says stuff like this, but you don't know what you've got till it's gone, kind of thing. And even though, it's literally updated a couple of days ago with some Star Wars commentaries and things like that, and I, tweeted Zorban and things and stuff like that, but I do think it's just worthy of a little bit of a shout out that, sort of thing, that how many times I've listened to one of these commentaries that other people have done, and there's 2 or 3 of these commentaries, like the Two True Freaks episode 1 commentary and things like that, where I've probably listened to them 50, 60 times, listen to them, when I'm just drifting off sleep, or, doing some cooking or something, or just in the bath or whatever, just walking over to my dad's or something. So it's always one of those things where I think, like, this alternative DVD commentaries thing, where I know a lot of people just do it, it's just a bit of fun, and like I say, this commentary, I'm opening, somebody be listening to on Halloween when they're doing the pumpkin or something, or watching it along with a VHS or DVD of Halloween 4 or something. But I really do think that, like, again, I don't want to over-egg it, and I'll finish this little tribute in a second, but yeah, it's just a really nice website, and, thank you very much for uploading all the commentaries, and thanks for giving us all that exposure and publicity, and the people we have connected with out there, appreciate it. Thanks a lot. There's Abraham Lincoln and Abraham Lincoln and I never noticed that. That's a great shot as well. That tracking shot there. Love the dial paper. Actually, this is another one of those things where it's kind of like say certain things when I do these commentaries, and I know it's becoming it's a cliche of a cliche almost. It's like, a trope of a trope. Oh, look at the Winston-Salem cigarettes there. What's really interesting about this as well, because there's a couple of almost frameworks of watching a film, and I always find that, like, I'm so used to just putting a film on, and I've got a quote unquote, I'm doing air quotes now, a bad habit of watching a film, of just putting the film on and either watching it and paying attention to it, but just kind of on in the background sort of thing. But I've got a sort of, again doing the air quotes, a bad habit of putting the film on and then literally sort of, I'll talk to my friends while it's on, or it'll be on while I'm filling out a form or something, or just while I'm doing some housework or something like that. So I've obviously seen these films quite a few times, just properly, just sitting down watching these films. But I feel like sometimes, though, when you watch them in certain situations, like now when you're doing a commentary, and especially if you're on your own, you sometimes, you're more observant, you're more observant of what you're seeing. And then if you're doing a commentary with other people, that some people might reference something, you might go off some weird, obscure tangents and things like that. But then not just even that, because like I say, I've literally got the X-Rental box in front of me. So I'm so used to seeing the VHS version of this film, but watching it on like a 55-inch TV, like, sort of HD copy of it, this might be the second or third time I've seen this widescreen. So it's always one of those things where, even though this was a low-budget film from the 80s, it looks so great, like, 16:9, completely, these great sort of, like widescreen panning shots and things like that. And then just notice, that kid got a mask, M.A.S.K. Oh, Jesus. I went down the wrong way, that be it. The beer made me kind of choke. So I made more beer to get rid of that choking sensation. Yeah, but so it's the first time I saw this in widescreen. Oh no, so it's one of the few times I've seen this in widescreen. So just seeing things like that, those cigarettes and things like that, where even though they might not be on the edge of the frame or that payphone, I feel like just sort of, just being a few feet from the TV, right next to the laptop and everything, that sort of you do notice things that you don't normally pick up on, and that's kind of cool about, like, sort of, or even say as well, saying about like the different frameworks that you can see a film in, because like I say, sometimes you'll just watch them normally and all those things I just said, and then other times you do like doing a commentary on it. And then one thing I've done recently is I think the phrase is called second screening, and I absolutely love it. And like I say, I've got this reputation for being like stuck my ways watching VHS and using CRT TVs and things like that. But like one thing I love to do, especially if I film is on, like, we've got a couple of channels in the UK called, like, we've got those channels obviously, but like there's a couple called like ITV4 and things like that, and sort of maybe even like movies for men or something like that. But if there is a film like Halloween 4 on, or a Bond movie or something, or some kind of cult movie, it's kind of really cool to go on Twitter and use like that hashtag, like Halloween 4 or whatever it may be, and there might be just 2 or 3 people on there, like, depending on what the film is, there might be a few more, but like sometimes there might just be a handful of people, and it's really good to just be like, oh yeah, remember this, but oh yeah, remember that bit, and you'll take a picture of like, your widescreen VHS or something, your big box VHS, and fire it off onto Twitter or something, and people go, oh yeah, that's cool and stuff, and so that's always awesome. And then, like, even something as simple as, I think I must have mentioned this on the commentary, but I don't know why it really stuck in my head as being cool, was I was watching Brewster's Millions once. It was on like Channel 4 on like a Tuesday afternoon, like really recently, about like a year ago or something like that. And like I put on IMDb, like, oh, I'm just watching Brewster's Millions on a Tuesday afternoon, it's awesome. And somebody replied, oh, there's Todd Johnson, the mask anyway, the guy, and somebody said, yeah, I'm watching it too. I was like, oh my god, this is awesome. Yeah, and then another thing as well, another great sort of way of watching these movies is sober, which I know is a terrifying thought, but it's like, it's amazing. So many of these films I've either watched when I was really young, and you just, they just wash all over, you just sink them all in, and you just watch them a million different times, like in a million different scenarios. But then, like more recently, you do think, oh, I've had a couple of beers. Oh, look at that till there as well, and like a proper clockwork till. Like, and that's one thing that I do think is amazing. Where you think this is set in 1988, or maybe filmed in 1987, but just say for argument's sake, it came out in 88. Maybe 89, 90, by the time it got onto VHS and TV and things like that. Wow, this just seems so old-fashioned. That like there's a street where I grew up leading into town. Used to walk past this like big running track and things like that. I used to run up this big massive bank towards a bus depot, like the main bus depot that covered the area. But there used to be this little shop, this little convenience store, like general store, like an independent family-run shop. And I always remember this really weird sort of, really vivid and vague memory at the same time of going in that shop and there being a till that was like one of those really old-fashioned tills, and it's like, wow, I'm like 41, but it's like, wow, Jesus, how old am I when I can remember this stuff? And then sometimes you watch something like this, you think, well, this is the 90s. I know the 90s isn't exactly current anymore, but to me the 90s always feels like, well, it's that borderline kind of, this was 6 years before I knew people had the internet in 1994, unless my math is really off, that's like about 4 or 5 years. And you think there's still dial phone in relatively big movies. There's dial phones, there's phones with cords on, there's tills that look like they're from the 40s or something. And I guess they were going for kind of a quaint family town kind of atmosphere. But even so, it's still kind of like, wow, you can be that kind of, hey, we're down with the kids and all that kind of stuff, and we're all hip and trendy, and yeah, I'm hip to this groove, daddy-o, rock around the crocodile and all that kind of thing. But then, Alexis Hill joke, and yeah, but, oh, what is that, Mindy? Yeah, Mindy's joining in. Hi, Mindy Cat. It's Mindy Cat. Yeah, so you've got all that kind of stuff just leading into like the 90s, and it's like so old-fashioned and so sort of, when we get into the future and stuff, it's like, oh my god, Important safety tip as well, guys. Got some Miller Lite today in the UK, and as far as I knew, Miller Lite always had a screw top bottle top, even though it looks like when you'd open with a normal bottle opener or whatever. And so I was trying to open the bottle just for like a second. I was like, why is this bottle opening? And I was like, oh, they've switched it to a normal bottle top. At least I think that's the case, or I've gone insane. Actually, that's one thing as well. About this video, like I said, I'll put a picture of it online. It's got the great kind of mirror image of loads of Michael Myers sort of stabbing the knife and stuff. But remember, that was quite a sort of powerful image. I'm sure it's on that Video Times article, maybe used in the sort of British tabloids going to have a field day kind of press kind of stuff. There's a few key images that are on this box that are quite cool. But one thing I always do, and there's a couple of little things I've done over the years and pick these ideas up from other people and things like that. Like when I went to college, there was one guy who lent me a couple of blank tapes, stuff recorded off TV, and he cut the like if it was like recorded off tally, he'd take like the what it said in the newspaper about it, like tonight at 7 p.m. You know, wherever it may be, you know, like The Fly or something like that, and he cuts it out, stick it on the box. And so when he lent me those tapes, I was like, that is a cool idea, you know, cutting the newspaper cutting out from when, you know, the listings and things, the TV listings. So like I thought, oh yeah, I'll have a bit of that. So occasionally I'll use that for tape stuff off TV. I'll you know, cut the listings out of the paper and stuff. But again, I can't remember where I first got the idea from, but seeing people saving the cinema tickets. And so I've saved cinema tickets over the years. And then just generally, it's become as a snowball effect where, say, I'll have brought a video from like a video shop or, you know, DVD from the supermarket or whatever. And if the price is on the front, especially if it's still covered in cellophane, I'll peel it off, take the cellophane off, and stick the price back on, or any little stickers there might be, like win an Aston Martin, or you know, I don't know, win a trip to Disney World, whatever it is, you know. So I'll stick those stickers back on. I think this has become just a bit of a thing, and to help me remember sort of where I've watched certain films, and you know, like say if I've got, you know, taken a film over my dad's or around my mate's house or something. You know, the three friends I've got. No, if I take, you know, a DVD somewhere or something, I'll sort of, you know, if I've got some beer or something from a supermarket and I get a receipt that says like, you know, 20 cans of beer and you know a small bag of peanuts, you know, I think, oh, that's a cool memento of that occasion, and I'll stick it in the box. And especially with something like Halloween, you know, it's so sort of, you know, I think most people, you know, you don't have to be a rocket scientist or something. It's Halloween. I wouldn't mind a pumpkin. I wouldn't mind, you know, some booze or something like that. So, you know, you pull a Halloween film off the shelf, chances are, you know, you'll probably be drinking. You'll probably like be carving a, you know, jack-o'-lantern and stuff like that. Oh, there's Donald Pleasence drinking. Yay! I love it. Oh, I've just finished my beer. I'm gonna get another one. Yeah, where was I? So I sip on my beer. The mum's got the same haircut as the daughter. Just noticed. Yeah, but so I get into this habit of sort of saving receipts and print stickers on boxes and things. But I think it really hammers home into my horror collection because, or hammer horrors even. Those guys smart, so I should be a journalist. But no, yeah, so it really sort of. Really, again, catches my eye every single time. Like I say, if I pull a horror film off the shelf, and I say, if it's Halloween, like say it's Halloween in a couple of weeks, and so all the stuff seems really sort of intense at the moment. It's everywhere. Actually, and getting onto that, Halloween is maybe getting a little bit too popular, but okay, I'll try to get onto that in a second if I can remember. God, gasp. But, and I will try to finish this anecdote if I can, if you can even call it that. But yeah, so I save all these receipts and stickers and everything. But when it's like a horror film, so many of my horror films now, I open the box and it's like full of little receipts and bus tickets and sort of, you know, little sort of trinkets and memories of like, oh wow, yeah, I can remember, you know, like pull this receipt out and it's like just a receipt of like, you know, it's like, and usually with the dumbest receipts, it's like, you know, it's like booze, you know, like 8 cans of lager, a bottle of whiskey, and 3 packs of cat food, and you know, like you know, a bag of cat litter, you know, all this kind of stuff. So it's like this, like sort of, you know, like say, oh wow, yeah, this and that, and the other. But yeah, so but the one real sort of, you know, icing on the cake kind of thing is the stickers for pumpkins. Is that, like, because you get a pumpkin when it's Halloween, and they have a sticker on saying, like, small pumpkin, large pumpkin, or used by the 3rd of November or the 5th of November, which is bonfire night and stuff like that. But, like, I always get the sticker off the pumpkin, or I have done a lot of times, and stick it onto the video I was watching when I was carving the jack-o'-lantern. So there's quite a few times, and I'm pretty sure it's on these 2 videos. I've got this is me Halloween 4 X-Rental box set. And the pumpkin says, Morrison's Pumpkin, $1.99, large, UK. And it's the 6th of November is the date on that one. And then I've got a Halloween 5 DVD box in front of me. And it says, large pumpkin, £2.69, display until 5th of the 11th, 2008. And that's crazy to me because, it's like 2008. I mean, I still think of that as being quite recent. And it's like, it's like 8 years ago or something. It's like, that's insanity. But just, I haven't checked beforehand, but I've got this, like I say, this Halloween 4 X-Rental box in front of me. And I'll see what the receipts say and see if there's any little memories in there. This one says, 15th of the 10th, 2004. And pumpkins, so it's 2004. Wow, 11 years ago, I think. Oh, this is kind of cool. This is the Halloween 4 box I got. And I may have said this on another commentary, but I always thought this was kind of cool. That I brought the Karate Kid 3 X-Rental. And it was, it didn't play for whatever reason. Quality guaranteed to play and stuff like this. And usually my videos have always been pretty good at playing, like, terrible videos. They've got, like, mold on them and completely battered and stuff like that. But for whatever reason, this video didn't play, what I thought it should play like. And I don't expect really high standards, but it didn't play. So I remember taking it back and he said, "I'll pick another one." I picked Halloween 4 up off the shelf. So he's like, I went from a 3 to a 4 again, sort of, turned into like a sequel and a continuation. But I've got the quality certificate here, and it says, return to Tiles, Unit 8, First Avenue, Glow Park, Marlow, Bucks, SL7, 1YA. And it's a little quality certificate. It'd be good to scan some of these things on the old website, sectorx.co.uk for sectorx.co.uk, that's right. And I have got a Weatherspoons leaflet. I don't know which Weatherspoons it is. It's probably downtown, as it were. The old Arnold Machin, and it was I was served by Billy, and it was 1 roast chicken plus barbecue sauce and optional chips. End of order. See you night. It was 26th of October 2008. So yeah, they're all the ones that have got dates on are all October, so it guess ties in with the perfect Halloween. Oh yeah, that's one thing as well. It does actually say on this tape, and this actually leads into another comment. Yeah, the old reels. Look at that. Hey, it's a reel system. Yeah, you're right, Grandad. Yeah, we've got the old Halloween 4 tape here, and it's got some of the trailers listed, but it leads great into a commentary I did about 2 weeks ago. I did a commentary for K9000. There's a great K9000 trailer on this video. It's got Steven DeSouza talking about writing stuff, but the other trailers, it doesn't list K9000, which is weird, but the other trailers on this DVD, according to what it says on the box, are Bloodfist, which I think has got Bolo Ewing in from Enter the Dragon, Bull Durham, the Kevin Costner movie, and Spontaneous Combustion, the Toby Hooper film. This is a Brave World MGM UA release. And apart from Spontaneous Combustion, and even that, I don't think I've seen any of those films all the way through, still to this day, which is kind of, it says something. The box as well as also a VHS beta box. You just got the arrows saying there we go. Try to post a picture of all this stuff online. Well, actually, Light Beer Monster Mansion, it says there, I think. If you can hear my cat in the yard, oh, what's happened, eh? You're on this strong. My cat wants a fuss. She sits on the chair behind me. I've switched my phone off, I'll take a picture. I haven't switched my phone off. I put it on silent. I'll go get it. I'll take a picture of the setup for take a picture of the old camera and the laptop, and I'll put it on selfie mode, and I'll take a picture of my cat behind me. There we go. What's always really interesting, I've actually said it, no, the cliche, what's always really interesting though to me is, like, I say it on all the commentaries, pretty much every single commentary I've done myself, I've said this, but for the first 10 or 15 minutes of a commentary, it's like the film may as well have just been thousands of, quick success. I guess it is. Kills the dog again, no, it's like an Halloween one. But the film, it may as well have just been a quick succession of images, like, because it's just all flown by so fast. But even though I've seen this film, easily 30, 40 times, it's almost like the first time I've seen this film, because I haven't watched it properly for at least a few years, I guess, when those receipts were from. Oh yeah, that's one thing I was going to say about Halloween. I feel like Halloween's getting not too popular. That's probably maybe the wrong phrase. It just seems a bit familiar. Like when I was a kid growing up, it was like, this is a great scene in this power plant. This is really, there's Bucky. That Michael Myers mask looks really good there. I mean, I know it's all personal taste, but I feel like some of the Michael Myers masks, just for me personally, some of them really work really well, and some just really think, what's a bit. Well, I guess the stranger the better, really. They just sometimes feel like they haven't, quite nailed it. But again, it's all personal taste. I mean, I even like the Rob Zombie take on it's really cool because it's really super familiar, and it's like so aggressive and so sort of, it's stylized to a point of like it's gone all the way back around again of like sort of. It feels like it's something that's really just picked up off the floor or something. It's been like in some bushes for 20 years, which I guess is kind of a nice little touch thinking about it. But Halloween getting too popular that, like, when I was a kid growing up, it felt, in England in the day, like late 70s, early 80s, it felt genuinely sort of organic and natural that, like, it's just seeing the kids here trick-or-treating. It felt like a genuine sort of thing. The people into it were sort of young kids, we didn't have that kind of I didn't really know a lot of adults that were really into horror movies that much. It was mostly like kids into like monster movies and Godzilla and things like that. The few people I knew and into that kind of stuff, like some few friends I had and stuff into sci-fi and sort of you're always into. I think it just kind of almost I think, again, it's just a figure just plucked out of thin air, but I think like 90% of kids, you're into like science fiction and, that kind of fantasy element because it's just fascinating as a kid. You're like, ooh, robots or whatever it may be. So like as a kid, it just felt like, and I wasn't like a never huge big fan of like sweets and chocolate, but it was always like, oh cool, I can put like a cheap, plastic mask on with the elastic band. Hey, wait up, kid, wait up, my elastic band's come off to, quote Seinfeld and things like that. So yeah, it just felt quite natural to be into Halloween, and we didn't. It wasn't like, and again, I'm saying this, I don't sound touch wood. I'm saying this with a degree of irony that, like, we didn't have that. It wasn't political correctness gone mad. You were allowed to sort of, walk around at like 5, 6 o'clock at night when it was dark and stuff, and you weren't like, people didn't like phone the police or anything like that because you just trick or treating and stuff, and we would get like given some sweets or some spare change and things like that. Oh, my other cuts, Hi, Dapster. Hiya. Are you scratching? take another picture of this. I'll try and remember to put this stuff on the message board. If I don't, remind me on, folks. Yeah, so it's kind of like, it felt like this real genuine thing that, like, anybody who didn't care about Halloween was like, okay, like, and I think I must have said this on the Halloween 2 commentary, but if I didn't, I'll just say it quite quickly. But this always stuck in my head, and I really hope, we didn't sort of cause any distress or anything like that. But I remember there was me and maybe a couple of other people, and we just knocked on somebody's door on Halloween, like, trick or treat, some idiot kids and stuff. And this old woman opened the door and said, "What's that?" And we were like, "What?" And, like, I don't know if she was just, like, sort of, she was joking, or, she was just trying to pull some huge Jedi mind trick on us that, like, it was just like, but it was like, this woman must have been, everybody older than, 20 when you're a kid may as well be 90 or something. But, this woman must have been 50, easy. And that's conservative, easily 50, maybe 60, 70. And I was like, you don't know what Halloween is? But, so, like, growing up, it was this, like, just this thing where I felt like all kids were, like, into it on some base level. I mean, I didn't get into horror films properly till quite later on. I mean, I was always fascinated by him, when people told me about Friday the 13th, and, some of the very first films I ever rented were horror, but, I mean, I was always, like, really scared of him, and I was always, like, quite, tittle stomached. I was, like, I got stressed quite easily as a kid and stuff. So, like, I never got proper into him until, until I was at least, like I said, I was always into him, on some level, but, like, properly, like, sort of being proper into him, being able to, name the directors and the creators, and, have a real working knowledge of it. I guess it builds up after a bit. But anyway, making a long story even longer, that, like, it was just one of those things. It was a natural progression. It felt quite normal. And then it must have been about 91, 92, 93. Obviously, can't talk for anywhere else. I think it's always been pretty solid in America and other places. But I felt like this Halloween culture of, like, trick-or-treating, and, maybe it was just, like, say, getting a few little pieces of chocolate or some spare change or something, which I think this is quite unique to the UK. I don't think they give money anywhere else. Maybe, I'm not sure. But, so, you maybe just got, like, little bits and pieces in there, and, you'd occasionally see a Halloween film on TV or some kind of horror movie or spooky movie or something like that. But, I felt like when it got to, like, that early to mid-90s, Halloween just disappeared. It was like, I didn't know anybody, apart from, like, Tom Stewart, Curtis, all those kind of people, that anybody, you barely mentioned it. And it was always one of those things where, like, I live in these flats with security doors and stuff, you like, need a little buzzer to get in after a certain time and stuff. And so I guess, in the last 15, 16 years, I think I've had 2 trick-or-treaters. And, like, people I know live in terraced houses, like, on a normal street, normal road. Like, I'll say to you, like, in the mid to late 90s, I'd say to them, have you had any trick-or-treaters? And they'd be like, we've had, like, 1 or whatever. And I'd always be a little bit gutted, because, like, any kind of, like, event, I'm always a little bit of a sucker for it, like that. Even though I'd quite happily sort of, wipe out Christmas off the calendar or something like that, or, like New Year's Eve or something, because I think sometimes, people just do it for the sake of it, like, kind of thing, which is fair enough, I guess. But, like, there's a lot of these things that I can sort of just do without. But things like Halloween or the Eurovision Song Contest, or certain things are, like, say, a little bit more sort of playful, a little bit more, feel like people are being a bit more personal, a bit more sort of real about it. And again, not, keeping it real kind of thing. We don't want to be, too cliche. But, any holiday that I feel is sort of real, like, people are genuinely into it, I always think, well, I hope it does okay, I hope it doesn't, fall flat on its face, or if like a decent band's playing the rock pub around the corner or something like that, or, like, I always think, I hope a few people turn out and stuff. So if I see something fall flat on its face, I'm always a little bit gutted. But so into that, like, mid-90s period where, there was nobody trick-or-treating, and, all the anywhere seemed to have horror on the TV, or, you'd see it mentioned, once in a blue moon, like on the radio or something like that, or just, hear a passerby in the street talking about it, or something on a bus or something. But then, as it slowly progressed into like to the early 2000s and sort of the mid 2000s, then 2010, 11, 12, it just seems like it's constantly been ramping up, and it's like I've even got estate agents around the corner that's saying like, "Ooh, you'll be shocked to see the Halloween deals we've got on these houses and things." And I did a Burger King video where we had the Halloween Whopper, which I never thought we'd have in the UK. Like, I saw it on like, one of these American YouTube channels. Like, oh, really? We get it, like kind of thing. And we got it, and it's that kind of thing. And, just going into like Asda, which is owned by Walmart, and, like Halloween stuff like everywhere, loads of pumpkins as soon as you walk in, and an aisle full of like, fancy dress costumes and all these different kind of things and stuff like that. And you're just like, wow, like, and like I say again, I don't think it's too popular in the sense that it's maybe not rivaling Christmas, although it might be damn close. But at the same time, I feel like the Halloween always, and it shouldn't be an outsider thing, because I don't think there's nothing worse than this meta way of thinking, or this kind of, when you get some super, and again, I'm, broad brushstrokes here, I don't mean this as, I'm just kind of just spitballing off the top of my head, but like, sometimes I always felt like hardcore Star Trek fans, or hardcore Godzilla fans, or, hardcore Dungeons and Dragons fans that, like, maybe not on purpose, but I felt like we're making their hobby a bit exclusive, and that, like, I felt like I could never be into sort of Dungeons and Dragons because I just didn't understand it, or because I only seen like 2 Star Trek films, I couldn't sort of talk about Star Trek and things like that to air proper Trekkie or Trekker, because I just get blown out the water, like kind of thing. So I don't want none of that, like kind of thing. And again, I'm sort of do you ever find women by fireplaces and underwear attractive? No, but I don't want sort of none of that to sort of like I say again. I don't mean that in no nasty way, but so I don't know if that ever really happened with Halloween, or sort of thing. I don't want that to happen to Halloween, I should say. But at the same time, I just feel like now it seems like the done thing to do, where even if you don't give 2 stuffs about horror, even if you don't give 2 stuffs about like having a good time when it's Halloween, it just seems like, it just seems like that everybody nowadays, like you say, the Halloween Whopper, you walk past, like every other shop has got some kind of Halloween theme, or at least some Halloween sign in the shop and something like that. And when it's actually Halloween day itself, you'll see a lot more of these things knocking around, and it just seems, well, actually, and this is case in point, I never thought this would be the case. I'll have to check this to make sure I didn't imagine it, but we've got an album series that's been going again since the early 80s in England. I think it's been going in a few other places just sporadically. We've got an album called Now That's What I Call Music, and it's like basically a compilation of 2 or 3 months worth of highlights of songs out of the charts, like just really popular singles and number ones and things like that. And it got to like, it's still going, even now it's on like, Now That's What I Call Music 90 or something crazy. I mean, it's like, wow, we'd have thought we'd ever get that far. But over the years, and even in the UK, you've been getting like, Now That's What I Call Music 1985, or Now That's What I Call Music 1992, and or That's What I Call Disney, and all this kind of stuff. And I think some of these albums have been released in other countries, which is cool. But I saw one the other day, Now That's What I Call Halloween, which is incredible in itself. And straight off the bat, I thought, cool, don't get me wrong, I've got some of these Halloween records and just random Halloween DVDs where it makes your TV look spooky and all that kind of stuff. And, great, I love all that stuff. Never want to, see it go or disappear. Perfect. But I never thought I'd see a Now That's What I Call Music Halloween. But if that wasn't good enough, I looked at the track listing and I instantly thought, the first songs you always see on these kind of records is Ray Parker Jr.'s Ghostbusters, or Thriller, or Monster Mash, or something like that. Again, fine, bit of fun, no problem at all. First track on this album, like I say, and you think these albums are nearly always people like, you know, whoever it may be, you know, big pop stars of the day, you know, literally from people like, you know, Justin Bieber to Bananarama, you know, Tiffany to like, you know, Iggy Azalea, whoever it may be, you know, huge broad spectrum of artists. Was the first track on Now That's What I Call Halloween was John Carpenter, the theme from Halloween. I was like, okay, that's pretty freaking awesome, because it was literally like, I wasn't expecting it, and it might be literally the only time I've ever seen it. I think the last No album I got was No 26, so I'm not exactly an aficionado on it anymore. But I'm pretty sure that's the first time I've ever seen a song on a No album that's never even been a single. I mean, I know now you can, like, I think I brought that, you know, Rob Zombie, or, you know, the Tyler Bates version of Halloween as a digital download once. But yeah, I don't think it's ever been a single like on, like, you know, vinyl or CD or cassette or whatever. So it's like, wow, you know, it's like, who's all that going? I must have mentioned this on the Halloween 2 commentary we did ages ago. But again, definitely worthy of a mention. But the soundtracks to the Halloween films, because I love the soundtrack to Halloween 2. Like the Howarth interpretations of the John Carpenter music is amazing to me. But Halloween 5, like, I always think, if somebody said to me now, and I think I said it at the start of this commentary, a pitch perfect, great slasher movie, Halloween 4, pull it off the shelf every single time, or, you know, just literally, or I say it to somebody as, like, you know, a recommendation. But one of the best soundtracks ever, one of my favourite soundtracks of all time, is the soundtrack to Halloween 5. Some of the songs on there, like Romeo Romeo and Dancing on Midnight and Anything for Money, oh my god, I've heard that soundtrack so many times. And, you know, don't get me wrong, it's easy for, you know, and I tried to explain this once, I think, very poorly on the Police Academy DVD commentary, and I'll try to explain it a little bit better. But to me, you've got an A-tier sort of level of soundtracks. You've got, like, you know, or you've got that real high regarded soundtrack or film score, like, you know, things like Jurassic Park or Jaws or Close Encounters or, you know, The Omen, Planet of the Apes. You know, people like sort of, you know, John Williams and Alan Silvestri and Jerry Goldsmith, all these great composers, and, you know, like proper, like, you know, A-game composers. And, you know, you even get these soundtracks like, you know, sort of you know, Grease or something like that, where everybody knows the songs. You know, like, you know, you can put them on in a pub or, you know, wherever it may be, or some party or something. Everybody knows just the songs. You know, I got chills. You know, I'm all blind. Oh, that's like up because my expert rendition of it. But yeah, if somebody said to me, and again, I'm not just saying it as some, like, you know, just to be, you know, go against the grain or sort of you know, just to be different kind of thing. But like I say, you've got this, like, I think you've got this top tier soundtrack of, like, you know, like I say, all these, you know, great soundtracks that everybody always mentions when they talk about great soundtracks. If somebody says to me right now, name your top 10 favourite soundtracks, it'd be Halloween 5, Police Academy 4, Teen Wolf, you know, because it's like these, Secret of My Success, all these kind of movies where, like, you know, like say, like when I'm, like, say, playing on FIFA, or like say when I said earlier on about listening to a commentary, sometimes I feel like, you know, it's easy to think, oh yeah, you know, I'll just sort of you know, I'll listen to, you know, some cool hip thing or something. But, like, almost without even thinking, if I, you know, want to sort of, you know, play on FIFA, or like say I'm just walking somewhere or doing something, it'll almost certainly be like, you know, some weird 80s movie that you've never heard of, or some Last Starfighter or something, like, you know, like the soundtracks to these films are amazing, or Crawl or something like that. So yeah, I think it's worthy of a mention. I think it'd be nice for people, someone listening to this, to sort of think, well, you know, if I only listen to sort of soundtracks that have got this, you know, huge built-in respectability, that, you know, it's a shame to, you know, not to go for something like a Halloween 4 or 5 or a Friday 13th Part 6 or something, because, you know, like something like Friday 13th Part 5, like Is Eyes by Pseudo Echo. Oh my god, what a great song, you know, it's like, We're just nearly at an hour mark. I'm just going to go for a quick wee and I'll try to get back as soon as I can. I did this, folks. Hey, 3 minutes, that's not bad. I wash my hands too. I apologise right now if you're listening to this on a bus or a train or something, you're dying for a pee. Actually, this is a complete aside, but I think it's definitely worthy of a mention. It kind of ties into horror too. I was on YouTube last night watching Dream Warriors by Dokken. I was watching a music video and it said, up next, and so I just like play. Why wouldn't you? It's Dream Warriors Dokken, for God's sake. But I noticed a comment and it said, I listen to Dream Warriors every day in the shower. And I thought, oh, that's kind of cool. So I just replied quick. I said, oh, that's really cool. Nice one. And as I was going to do the thumbs up for the comment, I noticed it was on 69. And I said in the comments that, my thumbs up has took it from 69 to 70. And I didn't think nothing of it, though. Just sent it. I got a reply back this morning. Somebody said, I've disliked it or took their thumbs up away, so it goes back to 69. And I just thought, that's really cool. I mean, of all these crazy things you see on YouTube, like, just people really just having a go for no reason, or like real proper, like, just people dicks on there, like, and that's one thing I do love about the internet, that, like, for the most part, like I say, you'll get idiots everywhere kind of thing, but that's one thing I do kind of love about the internet, though, where when it is firing on all cylinders, or it's like just these perfect, like, well, I talked about like Zarbin earlier, but like Zarbin's Twitter account has made me laugh so many times. Or there's somebody named Jay who I follow on Twitter, and he's got like a picture of like RoboCop, like a normal guy with like a RoboCop head as his avatar. And there's a guy called Shut Up Mike I follow on Twitter who's really funny. I could put some of these links, I'll try and put them on the blog post if I can remember. But yeah, so it's like one of these things where I think that's kind of interesting about these kind of things, like, say, doing like DVD commentaries, or sort of Oh, sorry. I really, really apologise for the gas. This is always a great effect. Yeah, that's you don't. That's not something you don't see people getting killed by a shotgun every day without them being fired. But yeah, so it's like, I think just see sometimes being into, horror or science fiction and things, you'll be on certain parts, like say IMDb message boards or certain Twitter accounts or something, like say Sarban's page, and it just creates these like great little circumstances that would probably never spring up anywhere else. There's a comedian that's really cool. Well, a good comedian, I should say. It's cool as a difference, as a matter of opinion. But a comedian named Dave Gorman from Stafford, I'm from Staffordshire, and he does this thing where he goes to like the review sections on the internet and things, and sort of pulls people's comments off and sort of creates like a poem out of them and things, and sort of just says these comments like as they're written, and just some of them are so great. And like, I think that's one great thing about, like, say, people that are into these kind of movies, like not just horror, but like, I think like anybody who does a DVD commentary or like any kind of creative reviewer on the internet, and again, not all, but I think a good 50%, like say, and I know I mention these kind of people all the time, but people like Cinemassacre and things like that, where or like Lawn Boys Poster and all these different kind of people, where I think, yeah, you're never going to agree with somebody 100%, but I really do think it's good that there is a lot of these people out there that sort of will voice their own opinion, or will give it a fair crack at the whip of, like, some original sort of angle or review on something. Actually, speaking of which, I'll have to try and post a link in the review tomorrow. I've already sent it out to the gang and everything, but there's a great Cinemassacre clip at the moment. It was posted a few days ago, and it's called Is It Horror? And I really did think, because don't get me wrong, I think like James Rolfe really recently has been really super busy and doing the film and everything, and I think this year he took a different approach of like pulling some old reviews up and taking different. This is always a great scene. Actually, be seen specific for a little while. But this is super cool. This is always one of those shots where, like, I always liked, so I was always a skinny guy as a kid and stuff, and I'd love the thought of being, you don't want to just like throw somebody out of a window or something, but I always like the thought of just being like being like a big tough guy, like just being able to have that, like, yeah, but so like that's with the sign. I'm sure I was watching a film the other day, I was like, God, the window, that looks just reminds me of Halloween 4. I think I ended up pulling it up and it wasn't like like put the two things side by side. God, what the hell was I just talking about? God, that weird when your mind goes blank. Yeah, but like say, so you get all these sort of people like sort of, reviewing and talking about things and things like that. And I do sort of think that, like, and again, you like say you can't generalize and say everybody because it doesn't work like that. But that I think if you do sort of, if you are like that's one thing I was going to say. Yeah, that like sort of on this Cinematic review when he said, "Is it horror?" This new thing that's been posted, uploaded, that I thought it was like a genuinely good question that sort of, and I think it come from a really cool place that, like, they probably just thought, like, because normally Cinemassacre videos are really well edited, really well put together, and all the stuff is really good no matter what. I mean, I love seeing like James Rolfe and Mark Matai just talking and stuff, so that's always good. But yeah, so on this Is It Horror clip, that sort of saying like what constitutes a horror movie, and and even they said on this clip that like that sort of it's like one of these things where it's like, well, it's a film that scares you, or a film that puts you on edge and things like that, and you're like, oh yeah, okay, yeah, it's kind of obvious. But then he was suggesting films that like sort of, something like Godzilla. And you're like, that is kind of scary, but not really. Kind of, is it more like sci-fi or anything? Well, it's about like atomic/nuclear war, and you think, well, that's pretty scary. And then, mentioning things like, say, Silence of the Lambs or Passion of the Christ, and all these kind of films that you would not necessarily, you wouldn't say they were horrors just straight off the bat, but the more you think about them, you think, oh yeah, okay. And then, especially with that in mind and just thinking about it going over in my head, like, the sort of what does make a horror movie, what is scary to some people and other, not scary to others and things. And I think I must have said this on a commentary, but one thing that really scared me as a kid, there used to be this instant mashed potato thing called Smash in the UK. It was advertised with these robots. I used to think, oh, that's scary as a kid. And I thought, oh, was it just being as a kid that it was scary? I watched it more recently, and it's still terrifying. But literally this morning, there was an advert for some eye drops that was saying that, like, if your eyes go dry or itchy or something, just put these eye drops in. And on the advert, you saw this person's eyes like freeze and crack and sort of as if they'd literally just like turned to stone almost. And it's like, that is one of the most terrifying things I've ever seen in my entire life. And it was like literally on at like 10:30 this morning. No warning. I don't want it to be anything like that. Free falls, falls, ankles, or anything. But at the same time, it's just like, with having that thing just in the back of my mind of what is a horror film, what does make something scary, and it is one of those things where, like, just recently, like, I've had this job like cleaning at the local cinema, which I have spectacularly quit today. Well, not spectacularly quit, just didn't turn up. But so it's like I had this job, and you go at like 6 o'clock in the morning, and I don't mind walking around early hours of the morning and sort of thing, and like, doesn't bother me, like, being out all random hours walking just random places on myself. But at the same time, you're just walking somewhere and there's nobody around, it's quiet, and you'll just see some street cleaner in the distance, like, it's an electric vehicle and there's just a light on or something, or there's literally the only people downtown, like, people in McDonald's, and you see the other person just filtering through, or somebody walking the dog or something. Literally just like handfuls of people in like a town centre, and then you walk out that place 3 hours later, and it's like, where'd everybody go? It's kind of thing, so it is that kind of, and again, I think I think about horror as well, and horror sci-fi. I think something that doesn't get nowhere near as much of an appreciation as I think once you start going into it, I think certain people are predisposed to it, and I think most people like horror on some level. But I think if you get into horror in a big bad way, to quote Kevin, to paraphrase Kevin Smith, I think if you do get into horror in like any kind of, everybody's watched a horror film at some point, but I think if you've got like a horror collection or you're into sci-fi, you probably do look at things just as on a certain level, and just sort of, things a little bit one removed or from above almost, and you do sort of think, that is weird, that is a quirky thing, because sometimes I've seen like, situations where, most people would just bat an eyelid at him, and I'm like, that's a bit strange, like, just the way somebody's looking at somebody, the way just somebody, the way somebody might have, separated themselves from somebody, or just sort of, like, even if, they've, put the dog away from, or the kid away from, or something, or, and it's just like, it just doesn't sit right kind of thing, That's one thing I was going to say as well, and I must have said this on other commentaries, but people like Donald Pleasence, like, see him on screen there, oh no, watch out there! God, Michael Myers looks strange, I look like a blonde hair, it was just the lighting. Yeah, but people like Donald Pleasence, that, like, when I was a kid growing up, and my dad would watch films like The Great Escape, and he had like Donald Pleasence, Charles Bronson and stuff like that, and they weren't new films like when I was a kid, but it was kind of cool though to like walk into a video shop, and in the brand new releases section would have something like Death Wish 3 and Halloween 4, and it's like, well, there's Charles Bronson and Donald Pleasence in Great Escape. So I've always kind of been grateful for that in a way, and I must have said it on the commentaries, and it's just complete fluke of when I was born. I've obviously no control over that kind of thing. I was like, no. I've never had no sort of, saying when I was born, but like, I've always thought if I was going to be born, like, the mid to, mid 70s, early 80s, or if I was going to be born, like, say, 1990 or something, I think I was glad the time when I was born, because it literally had the best of both worlds, where it was like, literally like, you couldn't watch stuff whenever you wanted, or you couldn't unless you were loaded and stuff, like, and you could get videos in the mid 70s, but I probably could never afford one. So yeah, I'm kind of glad that, like, I couldn't just pick up a phone and phone somebody, although you could get phones, but I just probably couldn't afford them, or my dad spent his money on booze and other things. So it's kind of one of those things where it's kind of like, I'm kind of dead glad I've got that appreciation for, like, older actors, older musicians, sort of quieter music maybe, or like slower sort of pace things, and like I love, like, kind of like, really aggressive music, like I put the Slayer album, and I like bands like Skrillex and things like that, and I like, really sort of in your face things, then things that just don't let up and things like that. And at the same time, I could watch something like Murder, She Wrote or something, and I'm kind of glad that, like, I use this phrase a lot, and again, like, talking about, like, trying to stop using the phrase, like, I always find this fascinating, I always find this interesting, things like that. But I do, and again, it's a phrase I don't like using, but I always feel sorry for, people that, like, can't watch anything other than horror or science fiction or romantic comedies or music or something, because like, I don't know how people cope, like, well, like, like, love horror movies, love, like, say, love, like, things with robots in and stuff like that, and then I could just easily watch, like, Lassie or something, or Benji or whatever it may be, or and I've never understood that mentality of just being able to just watch one thing or one or two things. And excuse me, I like the lighting there, that blue on green lighting there. This was always a great sort of again, sort of growing up with this, like, again, it felt like this natural progression from things like this to, the way the Terminator and Terminator 2 just, you could shoot it him and he wouldn't die and things like that. But again, it felt like a quite natural thing, like, say, where something like a Michael Myers in the first Halloween film got shot but just disappeared, so you never saw him, kind of thing, which I guess is kind of cool. Well, it is cool, but, like, say, with something like this where you saw Michael Myers just get shot over and over and over and over and over again. And then, like, in Halloween 5, it's like, I'm back. And then, like, in, say, Friday the 13th, Part 4 or Part 5 or Part 6, new team gets shot, blown up or whatever. And then I'm back. And so I think, like, we're growing up with these films and, like, literally have it rammed into my head over and over and over and over again that, like, oh, this person's just not dead. And so it's kind of, like, a really cool sort of, like, now, even, like, say, if I watch, like, a horror film now or, like, a monster movie, I just think, oh, he's going to be back in a sequel. Like, so sometimes I do think that's funny again, like, when you sort of, where people, like, talk about things in a meta way, or, like, the internet blows up over something, like, like, say, in some Game of Thrones thing or something like that. And even though I don't, like, watch a lot of, like I don't know if I said it earlier on, but that's one thing I did think was funny, that, like, sort of, I love sequels to movies, but I can't watch TV series to save my life. Like, even things like Netflix Daredevil, watch the first 4 or 5 episodes, yeah, this is awesome, don't watch the rest of them, kind of thing. And so it's like always one of them things where I do think it's kind of funny. Sometimes people are like, oh, what happens if this character dies, what happens if that character dies? And to me it's like, that character's not dead. It's like, it's like, to me it's like, I can't think of any TV show or any film that I've ever watched where a character's died, and it's like, I couldn't envision that character coming back in a certain way. Obviously, certain things, catch you emotionally, or think, oh, that's kind of a cool idea, that's kind of an interesting concept. But I literally cannot think off the top of my head, like, especially in recent memory, of, say, a film where if somebody said to me, in the next film, this person will come back, I'd be, okay. Because it'd be like, oh, flashback, or, some hidden message, or somebody's found some videotape or something, or somebody's found something. And so it's like, never say never, right? It's a great stunt there. That was good as well. His head just coming to the on the windscreen there, windshield. But that is interesting as well, though. Say, since listening to the sort of Kane Hodder audiobook about how he portrayed Michael Myers, it's interesting about all these killers that are a guy in a suit that, like, sorry, a guy in a mask, I should say, or a guy in a boiler suit and a mask, I should say. But it is kind of, again, what makes that portrayal that, like, because on the one hand you think big guy in a mask, scary, and it is. But at the same time, like I was saying about the Michael Myers mask, is that, it's a white mask with, the hair just, kind of pulled back or whatever. We all know where the mask comes from. I'm not going to mention it. But yeah, people always, so it's like one of these things where it's like, I think a lot of people would say, oh, well, yeah, it's just a big guy with that white mask on and stuff, or the hockey mask, whatever it is. But there's, like I say, I think there's certain instances, and again, it's all personal preference, it's all, to taste kind of thing. But what does make that scary? What does work? What doesn't work? Because I think it's Halloween H2O. I think Halloween 6 maybe. There's like CGI mask in it in one part and stuff. And to me, that person looks really good, like the Michael Myers in this. But again, was it just because I was relatively young when I saw it and I was just getting into all this kind of stuff? But who knows, right? I mean, it's hard to say. I mean, that just really works for me because even though I love the distressed version in the Rob Zombie ones, it's tricky. I mean, it's like even with like the newer Friday 13th and the not Elm Street, because Elm Street's always been, with it being like the burnt face, it's always been a bit more arty, for want of a better word, but because I guess the hockey mask is meant to be a hockey mask, that's meant to be a mask from a shop or whatever. So you're always going to be sort of on that. You've got to play more into realism because people are expecting a certain thing. Whereas the Rob Zombie one is sort of, it really is sort of, it's having its cake and eating it really, because it's so stylized, and again, like I said before, it comes all the way back round because it's so perfectly sort of, it just looks like a visual effects sort of mask. I remember Tom Savini saying about Leatherface that, somebody saying about Tom Savini's Leatherface mask in Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, that it looked like something Tom Savini had done as opposed to something Leatherface had done. And there is, even though I love the Tom Savini stuff in Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, there is a sort of, if you can see the production design in it, even though I love that kind of stuff, I love when you see the editing, I love when you see the sort of how it was pieced together like a jigsaw, like an Alfred Hitchcock film or something, it's still worthy of note that if you can make it seem, like the most natural thing in the world, then you're definitely onto something. About Hitchcock, it's very reminiscent of the Alfred Hitchcock, Oh, it's that Halloween one. It's the same. Watch out! Those pictures on the wall there, they got a picture of a ship or something. Oh my god! Interesting. Let's say those pictures. I quite like how they kind of like what you would see in every household in like the 80s and stuff. The evil is gone. That's nice there, but it's the only my Donald Pleasence line I can do, and I can't even do that very well. That would have been a great ending if there'd have been no other Halloween films. That would have been perfect almost. I mean, again, that's one thing as well. Even though I'm a sucker for a sequel, as I've said about 20 times already, the one thing I do quite like though is when a film, you think, oh, that should end there with a sequel. Like, you think, oh, there's going to be, there's going to be a sequel there. But like, if the film actually did end there, I think that is like, certain film series, if they'd ended, when you really want a sequel, but you really by rights, you shouldn't have one. I think that'd be so great. Was meant to be Tommy Doyle. This is always funny as well, though. Like even the I don't know what type music, because like something again, you think, oh yeah, how bad score to Halloween 4, and then you're like, oh, I can't listen to it though because it's terrifying. George P. Wilbur as Michael Myers. Oh yeah, he's one for you though. Anyway, you can post in the comments below if anybody's listened this far. What is the best horror film that has never been remade or there's never been a sequel? And nearly every film I've mentioned in this commentary, you probably won't be able to include in that list. And it's really funny because, like when I heard the question the other day, you think, yeah, what film hasn't been remade or a sequel? And obviously some of the really huge horror movies like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Captain Caligari, Nosferatu, all these huge films have been remade. But it is like, though, just off the top of my head, I could think of like Don't Look Now, the Donald Sutherland movie, and these might not be great movies, but things like Chopping Mall, I don't think has been, there's never no sequel to Chopping Mall, but that's one that I love, that horror movie. It's so cool. Usually, if I haven't got a random crew member, I go for the catering. So we've got 3 there: Mario's Catering, German Rodriguez, and Manuel Lorenzo. I don't think I've ever heard the word German before as as a first name. Oh, John John, I can never say Buchler. John Carl Buchler. Is that the design supervisor? Is that the same guy? Recorded in ultra stereo. And then that says soundtrack process with bass, Bedini audio, spatial environment. That was on the Halloween 5 tape that I was talking about earlier on. Oh, look at that. Original soundtrack available on Veresa Sarabande records, cassettes and compact discs. All 3, the classic 3 there. If that's got all 3 there, I say have you say Sarabande? You say Sarabande, I think. Critics, it's had a paperback too. I mean, that's what's amazing though as well. Talk about this weird crossover period between, like, can you believe the soundtrack to this was on vinyl, CD, tape, and there was a book you could buy. Try and do that for Tremors 5. There you go. Halloween 4. Transcast International, all rights reserved. See you next time, folks.